Welcome to All Clear, the podcast that takes you beyond the rails. Brought to you by the team at Australian Jumping, this podcast dives into the stories, the people, and the horses shaping our sport. Whether you're a seasoned competitor or simply love the thrill of the clear round, All Clear delivers the conversations that matter. Hit subscribe and join us for a fresh perspective on the sport you love. Today I'm joined by a good friend who also happens to be the FEI Director of Jumping, Todd Hinde. Todd plays a key role in shaping the direction of our sport, from championship planning and Olympic preparation to rule development and stakeholder collaboration. With experience both in the arena and at international leadership level, he brings a valuable perspective on where jumping stands today and where it's heading next. Welcome to All Clear, Todd.
Jo, and thank you very much for having me on.
So, Todd, can you just tell us briefly how you first became involved in the sport and what led you to this role that you hold today as FEI Director of Jumping?
Yeah, it's actually quite an interesting question, and I think it's a interesting enough answer. I was born into a horsey family. My grandfather rode, my auntie and uncles rode, my cousins rode. So it was quite normal for me to ride. I was fortunate enough that my grandfather supported me as a junior rider and young rider and travelled with me all around New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, going to shows. So the passion for jumping was certainly there in the blood from a very young age. And with that, it developed. I finished school and transformed a little bit into a different career path as a stock and station agent. But my heart always came back to the horses, and I ended up coming back to the horses and rode and then rode internationally, and then sort of got to a certain point that I wanted to get into the management side. So fast forward quite a few years, I contacted one of my very closest friends, Stephen Lamb, who had been and has been one of the most successful chef de keeps for Australia. And I remember I rang him when I was still living in Europe and I said, Lammy, I want to apply for the chef de keep role. And he said, not yet. He said, you don't have enough experience. I was a bit taken back and thought, oh, what? Well, it was the best advice I got, and I waited another cycle before I applied to become chef de keep, and then took the chef de keep role on for Australia in 2017. And led the team to their qualification place at the World Championships in Tryon, which was quite an exciting feat for Australia and jumping. It was our highest placed team event, and to qualify for Tokyo Olympics at the World Championships was a pretty special first World Championship experience for me, I guess you'd say. And I then moved on and grew into that role as the high performance jumping manager for Equestrian Australia. And led them right through to the World Championship in 2022. And then my final step as chef de keep and high performance manager was the regional qualification event in Valkenford in 2023, where we were fortunate enough to have a very successful event and take the win there and qualify the team for the Paris Olympics. But it's funny enough, I was actually on the plane. I was at the airport on my way to Florida for the Nations Cup event in early 23 when I got a phone call from a good friend at the FEI, Jean-Philippe, the Director of Solidarity, and he called me and he said, Todd, I think you should apply for the director role. And I had actually never thought about that position. I knew that position was available, and we were all talking who's going to get that position, who's taking over that role. And I'd never sort of thought about it. Then DP that I really should read the job description and think about it. So I say I'm on my way to a Nations Cup, and then I get back from Wellington and DP calls me again and said, okay, you were going to apply. So I was a bit slow on that, and it did take me 3 or 4 weeks before I applied. But I haven't looked back since, and very fortunate enough to be in the role.
What does a typical week involve in your current role now then?
Well, I've been in the position now just over 2.5 years, coming up 3 years, and I don't think 1 week has been the same. That's what keeps the job exciting and interesting, I guess. But when I look at a weekly plan and a day-to-day basis, we are the International Governing Federation. So our priority is always the bridge between the sport on the ground and the governing body, which keeps us intact with where the sport is. We're constantly looking at the short, medium, and long term visions and staying in line with the strategic plan. But day to day, there'll be different questions from different stakeholders, whether it be officials, organisers, athletes, asking clarifications on rules, on processes, on qualifications. So that's a weekly process. Always planning. So we have several FEI series and championships throughout the year, each year. So we have the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup. We had the World Cup final also in the mix of that each year. We have the Longines League of Nations. Then we have our FEI Youth Nations Cup. So we have consistent planning for all our series and major competitions throughout the year. And then depending on what cycle it is, obviously this cycle is full World Championship cycle leading into Aachen, being the first qualification for the Olympic Games in LA 28, which is a big step, and a lot of work goes into that on a weekly basis. And then it's the key factor in the main role that is the most important for me on a daily basis is staying connected and staying engaged with our key stakeholders, our athletes, our riders, our International Jumping Riders Club, our officials, national federations and organisers. It's so important for the sport that we are all connected. We're on the same page and striving for the same outcome at the end. So staying connected is most important on a daily basis.
So, looking back at last year, what would you say the most important achievements for jumping were in 2025?
Yeah, so 2025 was a big year for us. We had our full rules revision cycle. So the full rules revision comes around every 4 years. And it's actually when I started in 2023, everyone said, "Oh, you've got your full rules revision coming up, so you better get prepared." And that got me thinking. And we had a very historical rule book. It was a rule book that had been added to, a little bits taken away, but it was a clunky rule book. It was not an easy book to find out rules and answers. So I set out and I thought it was not going to be such a big job. And I said, I'm going to restructure the rulebook and I'm going to make it a document and more readable and user friendly. Well, I maybe shortchanged myself there a little bit and it took a lot more work than I thought. But definitely that was our major achievement last year. And at the end, I was extremely happy with where we got with the rulebook and the restructure. And I hope now moving forward, it's sort of a bit of a legacy now that rulebook is in place. And I hope that for the future, it's not going to need such a big change in the near future anyways. So definitely the full rules revision was a massive year.
So, other than reformatting and tidying up everything, what were the most significant updates that riders and officials need to understand moving forward?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely moving past the restructure and certainly understanding the article numbers now is a big thing. But overall, we didn't have massive major changes. We did have some key changes. We had the introduction of the jumping recorded warning. We've also had some changes within the championships, both world and continental, which used to be a standalone document that's now incorporated within the rules. Certain elements of tack. It was also passed at the General Assembly that all tack and equipment rules would be removed from the discipline rules and they will stand in a standalone document that won't need GA approval. It'll just need board approval to be changed. For jumping, it's a little bit more complicated. We have it was passed at the General Assembly, but that won't be introduced until the 1st of January 2027. So currently our big task around governance for 2026 is creating a tack and equipment document and based rules around that, which will be introduced in 27.
With regards to the tack and equipment, how do you balance, I guess, the performance demands with welfare when you're reviewing these types of things? I guess with all regulations, you mentioned all the stakeholders. There's a lot of different people involved. How do you manage to balance all of that?
Yeah, definitely. And it's key. Welfare is the key principle that we have, and it is a non-negotiable. It's priority, and it should be on the forefront of everyone's mind moving forward. But the key part is to make sure you engage with the stakeholders. You want their input from the official side that are on the ground seeing and dealing with different types of tack, to it's crucial to have the athletes' views because they can bring a different element of understanding to different types of tack and equipment. And you need to understand where they're coming from and why they're using it. For sure, a piece of equipment and a piece of tack in one person's hands can be used one way and in another's can be used another. So you're looking at all different elements on how tack is used. But then also, like you said, it's the demand of tack, and constantly manufacturers are creating new types of equipment, new bits, new boots, breastplates, everything they're creating. So you're constantly looking at how it is, and we've made good progress on the tack and equipment document at the moment, which in the coming weeks we will be going back out to our stakeholders to get further feedback on. But we're really looking at the key principles of material, dimensions, and then the use and effects of them as well.
Okay. Well, that is interesting. So if we look at this year, we're in 2026, and obviously you mentioned already Aachen, which is very exciting, and you've got World Cup finals. So what are the key priorities, I guess, as we move into 26 now?
Certainly, we have the World Cup final in the short term. It's coming up in April over in Fort Worth, Texas. It's going to be a super exciting final. It's the first time that we've seen a final in Texas and in Fort Worth. The organising committee, Derek and Sammy and their team have done an incredible job organising and getting prepared for the final in Dickey's Arena. So that's certainly at the moment key priority in fine-tuning the plans and the organisation of that. And then longer term is certainly the World Championship in Aachen. Aachen was allocated the World Championship back in November 2023, only a couple of months after I had started. So the plannings for the World Championship have been going for a few years now.
Before we continue with this chat, I would like to thank Divas Beverages for sponsoring this podcast and for all they do for our jumping community. Divas Beverages is a business that truly gives back to the sport we love. Visit divasbeverages.com.au to explore their full range of carefully crafted premium beverages. Now back to our guests. What makes Aachen such a significant championship venue?
Wow, what can you say? It's a historical venue. Walking into that venue and you look around and you see the history there, the excitement, the enthusiasm, and then you have the atmosphere. It's quite exciting to go back. Aachen held the World Equestrian Games back in 2006. And I actually remember at the time, Lammy was chef to keep. And funny enough, I was actually house sitting his house and all his animals. So to be now going there 20 years later after watching it on TV is pretty exciting. And Birgit and her whole team at Aachen, they are some of the most experienced organisers that we have globally. They've held world championships, they've held European championships, multiple CSIOs. It's an incredible venue and organisation with so much history there that brings so much excitement.
So what would a successful World Championships look like from your perspective?
Yeah, look, for me, I want to see the best sport possible. For me, that's priority. We want to produce top sport, not only at the venue, but also what we broadcast as well. We want to see excitement within medal day. We want to see teams fighting it out. So that podium finish. And then individually, you always want to see an exciting finish to those individuals. But when we look at broadcast and how our sport is televised now, it's very different to what it was 20 years ago. The improvements and the priorities we have in sports presentation now has changed dramatically in the last 5 years, let alone the last 20 years. And it's a real key element for us in the FEI that our sports presentation is key to helping present our sport to the viewers worldwide in the way we want it seen. And that's top sport on everyone's television.
I think we're making inroads into public perception of the sport after all the efforts that went in with Paris and over the last a couple of years.
For sure. Definitely the sport is being watched a lot closer these days and being talked about, always for the good, some for the bad. But I also think that's healthy. That's keeping us involved and always looking ahead to the future. It's a key priority of the FEIs to make sure that we are as open and as transparent as we can be with data, with facts and figures, publishing whatever we can on what we're doing on the veterinarian front and the biosecurity front and all the programs and projects we have going at the moment.
We go into a little bit about the welfare advancements and monitoring systems that are making a difference now.
Definitely. And we are definitely moving away from the opinions and moving a lot more towards the evidence and science-based analytic data. And actually, we have the FEI Sports Forum coming up in March, at the end of March 30th and 31st. And we actually have a dedicated session on data-driven welfare and safety, which the FEI Veterinary Director will be presenting along with some of his colleagues and key researchers, some data and analytics to help support the welfare and safety.
So when we look past Aachen and we look ahead to LA 28, what are some of the differences that go into planning an Olympic Games as opposed to a World Championships?
Yeah, definitely there's actually a big difference, even though the key principles are the same. When we talk about a World Championship, you're talking about just your sport and you're organising just your sport. When you start to move into the Olympic Games, there are so many more levels and factors that you need to consider. And there are a lot of non-negotiables within the IOC and the organising committee of the Olympics. So whether it becomes hospitality on site to broadcast and timings, but ensuring that the welfare of the horse is always a priority, making sure that they have adequate rest between competitions. Then you also need to consider what time broadcast is as well. So it's quite a complex organising and planning of Olympic Games. Yeah, as I said, there's so many more levels and factors that you have to take into the consideration.
Are there any other sort of bigger goals? Are you thinking as far ahead as 27, 28 with strategic plans, or are there other things that you've got in your mind leading into LA?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. We're always looking into the future, and the planning for Brisbane 32 has already commenced. So we're well on the way with that. But in the lead up to those next two Olympics, one of the key factors that I am extremely passionate about, and I believe is one of our key priorities, is the youth of today. They are our future of the sport. And for me, it's a high priority to ensure that we educate our youth moving forward into the future. We've actually just created a youth education program, which is being rolled out by my department to all national federations who are interested in engaging with us. It's an education material on all different aspects, whether it be communication and media to social media to anti-doping, safeguarding, veterinary matters. It's really there to help educate our youth and give them the insight of the tools that they really need to work towards their future in the sport. And for me, it's key. We're not there to train the athletes and make them as good as they can as a rider. That's for their coaches and trainers to do. We're there to help educate and guide our youth in the right direction of the sport and make them the best athlete they can possibly be.
Do you see that there's any changes coming up in the pathways from young riders or youth to senior elite competition?
Yeah, definitely. We're always looking into the future and Look, I think it's an evolution of the sport, and we're seeing it change in different regions. We see different regions have quite strong youth squads and development programs, which really help encourage them transition through to the high performance senior areas. It's a cost factor as well that you have to take into consideration. The sport is growing and the sport is expensive, uh, but there's education tools out there to help educate athletes how they can manage owners, how they can with owners on finding horses and moving through. There's a lot of extra tools out there that can be used. I think also our national federations have a big play in this as well. As a international federation, we can help from an international level, but we also need our national federations to guide our youth on the pathway from the junior young rider ranks through to the seniors.
So, still on the youths for a little while, how did the Youth Olympic Games fit into long-term vision?
So we have the Youth Olympic Games this year in Dakar in October, November, have always been a key part for the FEI. We have seen in previous Youth Olympics riders compete there that have gone on to now represent their countries at the Olympic Games. We've got Martin Fuchs, for example, who has been to the Youth Olympics and then now represented his country numerous times at World Championships and Olympic Games, World Cup finals. So it's definitely a great path, and there's quite a few riders now that have been through the Youth Olympic program. And I think it's exciting to see the lineup of athletes that we're going to have in Dakar, to see which ones of them will be the next ones to shine on the senior stage.
Looking at the health of the sport of jumping at the moment, how would you describe the current global health of the sport?
Actually, I think within jumping, we are the largest discipline of the FEI. In 2024, we had just over 1,700 CSI events. In 2024, we had just short of 25,000 athletes registered and just over 52,000 horses registered. And then when you look at the amount of events and then you look at how many starts over all of the events, in 2024, we had approximately 475,000 starts. And in 2025, we had approximately 488,000 starts. So when you look at it overall, it's quite an impressive statistics on participation in jumping. And we're seeing a growth from year to year, which is always a good sign.
And how are you finding the collaboration between the key stakeholders? Is that fairly strong? Are there areas where it needs strengthening?
Look, you can always strengthen and you can always build on relationships, but it was one of my key principles when I first started in the role that I wanted to make sure that I had the strongest relationship with my stakeholders and build that collaboration with them. I now can say that my relationship with the International Jumping Riders Club and all the riders is very strong, and I've got a policy that my doors never close. My doors are always open, so I can always be contacted at any time to discuss any topics, whether it be something that can help grow the sport, whether it be an issue that we need sorting out. Our officials, our International Jumping Officials Club is also a very strong collaboration that we have with that club. Our equestrian organisers, our national federations, it's certainly key to success of the sport.
It seems to me that marketing horses is challenging and that there has been no quick and easy platform dedicated to connecting performance horses with potential new owners. So I developed Pro Horse Match to do exactly that. Based on the concept of a dating app, you can save your preferences, e.g. discipline, competition level, pedigree, age, price range, etc., and receive email and push notifications when a horse is listed that meets those criteria. Most importantly, listing a horse is quick and easy and can be done in less than a minute. The in-app chat is a key feature of the app, allowing for a real-time discussion between sellers and potential buyers to determine whether contact details are shared and the conversation should be taken offline. It is currently free to list with no payment details collected, So I encourage you to visit prohorsematch.com and join the hundreds of users already registered and check out the quality horses listed. Now back to our guest. What do you personally enjoy most about what you do in your role?
I guess this is actually a bit of a challenging question, I think, because I love the challenge on a day-to-day basis that you never know what's going to land on your desk. So that brings an element of excitement. But to be honest, Jo, this sport is my life. It's my passion. And I absolutely love working with the horses, seeing them develop and progress, seeing our riders go, standing on the sideline and watching a team win a Longines League of Nations and the excitement you see from the team. We saw in Abu Dhabi last week, the French team come out on top of the podium and you just see the excitement, not only in the athletes, but the grooms, the chef to keep and all the support staff. For me, that's one of the most exciting times is when you actually see the success of the sport.
And you secretly get a little bit more excited when you see the Australian teams doing well?
Oh, look, I always love seeing the Aussies out there competing and doing well, and I'll always be an Aussie at heart. But to be honest, seeing all the nations now working, it's funny, like, yes, I'm an Aussie at heart, but I feel like I'm a part of every nation now. And the excitement you see from different nations, they might be a developing nation and they come out of nowhere and they have massive success. For me, that's the growth of the sport.
Yeah. So, when we look in a global perspective, what separates, I guess, a strong national meter 60 combination from a consistently successful international one?
Look, there's so many different elements when we look about national versus international. It comes down to the course and the course designer. It also comes down to the combinations that are entered in that specific event, that specific competition. Course designers, it's a challenging job that they have. They can design a track, but they also need to look at who's entered in that competition and they may have to adjust accordingly. So there's a lot of different elements to come into play, and it's actually a real difficult question to answer because there can be some national competitions that are just as difficult as international competition. And there can be international competitions that may not be as difficult as a national competition. So there's so many different elements that come into play, from the atmosphere to the footing to, like I say, the combinations entered in that competition. So yeah, that's a bit of a difficult. I haven't really given you a clear answer on that one, but look, it's a challenging one.
Well, I'm probably going to make your life a little bit more difficult now because, as you know, with the podcast, we've got a tradition where each guest leaves a question for the next guest without knowing who that guest will be. And your question comes from Robert Stewart, and I'm very glad that I've got you on as the next guest when I read out this question. I'm just going to give you a little bit of detail because Rob started by saying that in Australia, riders and combinations are competitive at a metre 55 and a metre 60 nationally, yet they often face a technical gap internationally. And what can be done to raise the national bar so that the transition to international competitions happens more quickly? How can riders be better supported in bridging that gap? And are there any sort of developmental changes that could shorten the progression to a consistent international performance?
All right. Well, thanks, Robert. That's actually a very good question. I've got to say it's an interesting question. When I look at jumping in Australia, and okay, I might be taking my FEI hat off and putting my ex-chef to keep hat on here a little bit, but the development that our sport here in Australia domestically, how it has grown and developed in the last 10 years is enormous. We have amazing riders here. We have talented riders here. What they're missing is that international experience. Where that bridge is getting closed a little more and that gap there is our organizer coming on board. They are ensuring that our footing is key for horse welfare. They are looking at getting international officials, not only course designers, which we have always had an international course designer come over once a year, but we're seeing more and more of them coming over each year. And that is key because that is giving a different element on technicality on the courses, on distances, elements on the course that maybe we don't see nationally. It's also not only a benefit for our riders and our horses, but it's a huge benefit for our domestically based course designers. We have incredible course designers here in Australia, but it's also giving them the opportunity to learn from someone internationally as well. So I think that is a key element of the progression and closing that gap. Also, what I think we can do in Australia, and we can do it better, is we need to utilize the knowledge of our riders that have gone overseas and have competed and based over there and got that experience. We really need to draw the knowledge out of those guys as well to help our sport here in Australia. We've seen Billy go over several times now. He's been on 2 world championship teams and he's now back over there with a different lot of horses now working and aiming towards the world championships. We've seen Kerm go over and do it multiple times. Chuggy. There's so many of our riders that have gone over and come back. But then we also have a lot of Australian riders based in either the States or in Europe. And I think there's a lot of knowledge out of those guys that also can be brought back to Australia as well. Look, that my answer might be going down a little bit of a different direction, but overall, we have very knowledgeable riders here. We have very talented riders here. It's the experience that they need.
Before then I ask you for the question for the next guest, I want to ask you, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
The 18-year-old Todd? Actually, Jo, I don't think I would change anything. I have been very fortunate in my life to experience so many different elements of life. I competed internationally, not on a high level, but I competed internationally. I took a completely different career path which gave me much life experiences working in the stock and station business. But I guess when I bring it down, I guess I would have said to myself at 18, never say no. Take every opportunity that it comes.
And that's advice that you would probably give to young riders as well today, is it?
Most definitely. It's the first thing when I do a talk with the youth is always be open. Always ask questions and never say no. Take opportunities that come and run with them.
Is there anything that you think we haven't covered today that we should have talked about?
Look, I think we can look at the sport as a whole, and for sure our key priority is horse welfare. Our social life needs to operate. It has to be on everyone's front of mind when anything they do within the sport. Unfortunately, now in today's society, everyone has a phone and everyone's phone has a camera. So we have to be aware of what our actions are and what we're doing. And we need to think about our horses first. I think leading up now to LA Olympics, and then more exciting, we have 6 years to go before Brisbane 32. And look, there's a lot of work to be done before Brisbane, but we all need to be striving for the best for Brisbane. And back in Australia, everyone from our riders, our owners, our breeders, our officials, they all need to be thinking long-term and thinking about Brisbane.
Yeah.
It's also pretty exciting, Jo, that we're going to live through our lifetime and have 2 home Olympic Games. I don't think there's too many people that can say that they've had 2 home Olympic Games.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll ask you now, do you have a question that you would like to leave for our next guest?
Look, I have to admit that I did write down my question because you just don't know who that next person's going to be. But what I find quite interesting to always listen to from different perspectives. So the question is, what do you think is the priority here in Australia for the next 6 years, leading to Brisbane 32 Olympic Games and beyond.
That is fantastic. And I'll make sure to pass that on. Thank you so much for your time today, Todd. I really, really do appreciate that you've taken the time to chat with me. Really great to see you again. And I will see you in Aachen, which I'm very excited about because I've never been before. So that's very exciting for me. So I'm sure I will see you there. And thank you for everything that you're doing for the sport. And we're also incredibly proud of you as well. So thank you. And thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Jo, and look forward to seeing you in Aachen. And just remember, take that deep breath when you walk in those front gates.
I certainly will. Thanks, Todd.